coming out of summer 1991, everyone had such a good year. That year, you know, like the rave scene was well and truly established across the country, you know, like all the way from Scotland to Penzance, you know, there was raves happening, do you know what I mean? All across Wales, everywhere, like the scene, so many little, like you spoke about with Ian, like so many like pockets of rave communities, do you know what I mean? Hemel Hempstead, blah, 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 here, there, the other, Brighton. Everyone had their own scenes, you know. I think at that time, like almost every home county had its sound system. It was like doing it for them. Like in my area, with the theatre teachers, there were other raves and there were other sound systems, but you know, you latch onto one where people that you know.
Well, in one way, that is quite similar to all the electro hip hop stuff, isn't it? Like in the way that all the different areas seem to have their own little breakdance sort of crews. It was a similar sort of, you know, it was a similar sort of thing. Was it spread this sort of subculture, and yeah, you would have the Luton breakdancers or whoever, and the same thing with the sound systems. It was them little. It was wide, like you said, widespread across the country. Well, yeah, you can trace back some of the cool acid house clubs to like, you know, Shoom or Clink Street or these like nefarious sort of venues. But at the same time, like you said, it's all over the country. It wasn't, you know, once it got out there.
That's right, you know, and then like coming out of like summer 91, like, you know, obviously like the winter's coming in. I seem to remember it was a pretty cold, wet winter. I remember the boys, the theatre teachers chaps, they tried to do like one more party at the end of the year. It was like in September or something. It was out near Fleet Services, just off the M3. And, you know, like, it was cold. Do you know what I mean? It was a little bit too cold to be doing that. Like, the party happened and it was all right. It might have got shut down by the police, that one, actually, for some reason. I think it might have been private land or something. But I remember it was like, yeah, it's cold now. And, you know, and then you're into this thing like, right, well, this ain't stopping, you know what I mean? It's time to go indoors. Which was something, I think, for the theatre teachers and the people that followed them about and went to all their parties, that was something that a lot of them hadn't really done before. Do you know what I mean? No one had sort of like been going to like warehouse raves, with the exceptions of obviously some of the folk. But like, so it was on. And then like around about that time, and this is where I sort of started to come into it, became friends with Cy Brown, and we maybe started like DJing a little bit together. And then I don't know who it was, I think it was Pete, made a connection with a couple of Brazilian people, and they had a squat in Great Portland Street, just off Great Portland Street, on a road called Longford Street. It was called the Vicarage, I think. It was next to a church. It was like a 3-story place, like a tower. Looked a little bit like something out of, I don't know, like it was old, battered, like sort of red brick building.
Scooby-Doo or something.
Yeah, it was a really interesting place. I'll try and find some photos of it for your images, so people can get an idea. It's still there, but yeah, it was called the Vicarage. It was on a road called Longford Street, and the boys organised taking it over for a night, basically. So now we're into like a situation where we've got to do 3 rooms, and in those days, it was like, it was kind of good timing to have 3 rooms, because like people's taste in music had kind of split by this point. You know, it was like myself and Simon and a couple of the other lads, you know, had taken this sort of like the slightly more industrial edge over, of the sort of like a harder sort of take on techno. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then like some of the other lads had gone like maybe slightly the other way, you know, like with what they called garage back in the day, which is not like, doesn't sound like garage, what people call garage now. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, New York garage, really. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that, you know, and a bit of like Italo house and that, you know, like there was like pianos dropping all over the place. Then the other boys had got right into their dubs, you know, and they were like more into the kind of like On You Sound and Sherwood kind of edge of things. They were going under the name of Barge Child. That was Jim Foster, Dave Appleton and a few others like that. So the middle room, which was like on the entrance thing, that was like sort of like playing that sort of stuff. Originally, the house boys and the garage boys, they went in the basement, and me and Brown and us lot, we took the top floor. But like the party was going off so much that people were like a little bit worried about the floor going through, you know what I mean? Like I remember the ceiling was like dipping like this, you know.
Yeah, I've been a few parties like that where,
you know, you're looking at the structure of this building and like, oh man, like that those rafters shouldn't be moving like 6 inches to a foot.
You hadn't done a health and safety, set up before you did the party.
Well, luckily enough, the health and safety bloke wasn't available that weekend, which was
yeah.
which was a stroke of luck. He was busy. He was at the football. So we did these parties anyway. And now, but without really realising it, we were just sort of doing our thing because like people was following different scenes. So it sort of split, and there was, and it saddened me even at the time because it was like. When I say there was a music split, like, it was really sort of starting to become a bit of a social split as well. It'd be like, you go back to someone's gaff after the party, and back in these days, the parties were sort of finishing at like kind of 6, 7 o'clock, and you go back, so the party's not done, there's going to be a bit of afters here. And then it was like someone, Brown had like put on like, I don't know, like some sort of industrial, one of the more industrial kind of underground resistance things or something. And, people are like, scratching their chins, like slowly making their way out of the kitchen, do you know what I mean? Turning on a different stereo, playing some house sort of thing. And like we sort of didn't fall out, but like we fell out a little bit, do you know what I mean? We didn't agree on music anymore, that sort of like that One Nation Under a Groove thing that was very like important in the early 91. Like that kind of gone now, you know what I mean?
Well, like you said earlier on, like, the tunes all sort of mixed up, and then, it did start segregating, like 91 into 92. Like you said, you had all the purism started coming in. And, as you said, the after party, there was normally like someone's gaff, decks there, people putting tunes on. And then, like you said, if you're expecting like fluffy Italo piano house and Cy Brown's putting like underground resistance on, then
exactly that. And like got to remember this is Cy Brown we're talking about as well. So like if someone's got a little pile of tunes that like are lined up next to the decks that he doesn't want to hear, like he'll hide them under the bed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Shouts to Simon Brown.
Out to Si, love you, man. But so the splits on, so that worked really well. And like Longford Street for us became like a kind of like a it's almost like a legendary venue for that crew of people. Do you know what I mean? Like there was a lot of parties there.
All right, so it wasn't just a one-off.
No, it wasn't a one-off. It ran for like, I'm going to say 2 seasons. I'm going to say, I could be wrong. I could well be like corrected on that, but no, it went on a long time. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't a summer thing. It was a winter thing.
And it's a good central spot, isn't it? It's a good central spot. You're central London, really. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're central London, and like A316, like everyone could get there. We met a lot of people through there. We even had people like come up to us. I remember there was these lads. They were from Burgess Hill, and they loved it. They were just like, right, guys, we own a load of sound system. More than happy to like just do this for you for free. And we were just like, well, if you're going to do that, like that's fucking sound, and they brought down a load of turbo sound for us. So this time now, like the PAs were getting louder, more powerful, more bass, more volume. Gabba was sort of starting to become a bit of a thing even around about this time. We had Toby Scopes, who now produces under the name of Serial Killers, makes like jungle drum and bass. He was down there. Skinny as a bone, you know what I mean, with a big, like, kind of Lucille Ball hairdo, like, banging on the decks, like, doing mixes by just, like, thumping the turntable so it, like, jumps and scratches and then just, like, bringing another hardcore tune. But, it kind of went, it was good down there, Industrial Strength Records, that kind of thing, and that was our sort of, like, introduction into squat parties in London. Out of that, a lot of people came through the door, and out of that we met a lot of different people, it opened up a lot of doors. And around about that time there was obviously like the bigger parties were going on, your Spiral Tribes and stuff like that, which if anyone's got any like never been to like a Spiral Tribe party 91, 92 in London, thinking like it was full of people like hugging each other, blowing whistles, and and like all loved up, then they're mistaken. Those parties were pretty moody back then. I remember one Christmas they'd squatted the Camden Roundhouse, and they squatted it from the Saturday before Christmas, and then they carried the party on from there all the way this Saturday through that weekend, over Christmas, all the way to New Year's Eve. You know what I mean? So that party, however long that went on for, we're looking at 8 or 9 days or something. We rolled up there on the night before Christmas when it was like a new place. Camden Roundhouse, you know, you've all been there now in its latest state, but back then, you know, you went inside, it was pitch black. Like the only lighting in there was a few lights around the sound system, people blowing fire, juggling with fire. That was sort of like the only light. The sound system would get turned off like every 20 minutes, and someone would jump on the mic just going like, if people don't stop robbing people, then we're not putting the music back on. You know, the music the music would go back on. I was with my man Glenn and we walked in through the door. He was standing next to me 1 minute. Next thing I know, I turned around to talk to him and he's not there. And I'm like, well, fucking hell, where the fuck have you been? Like, I found him a little bit later. He said, oh, man, you wouldn't believe it. Because I was standing there, and some rude boy stuck his arm around my neck, shoved a gun in my stomach and said, we're coming with you, I'm going to blow you away. Like, dragged him across the floor, emptied his pockets for whatever he had, you know, 10 quid and like a few little fellas or whatever. And that was it. So I was like, oh, man, this place is well on top by now. You know, it's kind of, you got like a sketchy vibe going on now. And so I've gone out to the door where like you come in where like the sort of security and that are, and I walk outside and there's just like the security from Spiral Tribe or whoever was squatting the building. It wasn't necessarily the people from the sound system, and they're at the top of these steps, and the steps go down onto Camden Road, and at the bottom of the steps you've got this like motorbike gang, like these people from the Road Rats. You know, and the guys from the Road Rats are trying to get up the stairs to get in, and the guy on the security standing there. Do you remember those big mag lights, Neil? The big long torches that were like a metre long, weren't they? You know.
Well, they were the torches, but they were like a weapon. Yeah.
Yeah, more of a baseball bat, less of a torch, basically.
You could always say, "No, it's my torch," and then whack someone around the head with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember just like going outside, and there was like, you know, the guys, these motorbike like guys like. Motorbike gang trying to come up the stairs, the security's whopping them down with like this fucking mag light, doof, doof, doof. Eventually the guys on the motorbikes kind of left. I mean, I imagine there was some sort of repercussions on that. We hung around for about another half hour and then we got out of there. And we actually went back in the morning, and by the morning it was good. The rave was on, but yeah, sketchy. You know what I mean? It was like.
But you're right. Some of them parties, like you said, they weren't all like, yeah, the myth is everyone's loved up, and you know, and obviously that was going on. But yeah, there was like. Again, with all the gangster crew as well, people robbing the door, there was all that sort of shit going on, and I guess this is the good and bad thing about illegal parties, isn't it? It's like legal parties, like you can sort of go on all night, and it's a bit more free to do what you want. But yeah, it can be more sketchy if it goes out of control, and there's like loads of wrong uns in there, like robbing people, like you said.
That being said, though, another memorable Spiral Tribe one that I did go to, which was, you know, the opposite of that, which was like a really good rave. It was Elephant and Castle. I'm going to say, I could be wrong, it's because your memory plays a bit of tricks with you, but I'm going to say it was either like next door or opposite to where the Ministry of Sound is now. And I think it would have been pre-Ministry. I can't remember when Ministry of Sound opened, but I'm going to say it wasn't there, but it was very close to there. And it was in two like long arches. And they were, I think they belonged to the police, these places, because they were full of all that sort of police stuff, like police stickers, you know, the sort of stickers that would go on the car or like the stickers that would go on the shields. And that, you know, that was good. That was proper, like shirts off, whistle posse, you know, like getting down to it, like strobe lights and sweaty. Like,
loads of coppers having it, like peeled out the nut.
And that reminds me, when I think of like that sort of vibe, of that sort of like sweaty sort of thing, did you ever go to that place, the fitness centre?
Yes, I was down there.
The famous night they did down there was called Shoom, wasn't it? But I don't know if the night that we went to was Shoom.
No, I went there, I think it was a Dave Courtney night. Do you know who Dave Courtney is? Like, he's a South London face. It was a Dave Courtney night, like, because, like, yeah, down the fitness centre. I do remember that. Yeah.
That was a good little venue, wasn't it? Really low, like, you know.
Really, that was where total sweat dripping off the ceiling. Obviously, loads of mirrors. Tiny.
Small,
place.
yeah. Small.
Yeah. Again, my memory is very vague of that night because I was quite happy that night and like it, but you know.
All I remember the night we went in there was just like I'd never heard so many variations of the Mentasm noise. Like it was around about that time, you know, when like that sort of that Alpha Juno noise, like the Dominator and the kind of Mentasm thing. It was at that time, just all night long, you know, it was just different versions of that going on.
Yeah, more Hoovers than Currys. Yeah,
exactly, mate. exactly. So, but yeah, you know, parties were there were good ones, there were bad ones, there were dangerous ones.
I mean, I did hear a story. I did hear a story when the Ministry of Sound opened, and again, I don't know how true this is, but they said like when it opened, they got massively robbed by like a whole gang turning up and robbing all the money off the door, and like they kept it out of the papers, you know. But it was like some quite serious people going up robbed the ministry. Again, you know, I don't know how true that is because, like, you know, so feel free if that's but you know, there was quite there was that mixture of like underground, yeah, gangster crew involved, and yeah, there was lots of money to be made in that sort of scene.
I guess so, and I guess it was fairly easy pickings, you know,
Yeah,
to a
yeah,
certain extent. That kind of like for us, like we'd done our Longford Street thing, and like we'd done all that, and that kind of like sort of vibe like that was not really our vibe. We still had our sort of like our crowd of people that were really into it. So by this time we were out like sort of like searching for venues, you know, trying to find like places to do them. And do you know what? They were some of my best days out I ever had. You know, on like a Wednesday or something, we'd like get the train into Central and then just like start walking around, like pick an area and go round and just like ask people, you know, can we do a party in your building? Like the place when we used to walk around looking for it, it had like a certain don't know what the word is, like things that would make it. We wouldn't just go and ask anywhere. It had to have the right things. So it had to have some sort of arch and sort of enclosed space with a door, and it had to be fenced off. And I remember me and Brett like were going around like asking everywhere, like walking all around like Vauxhall, Waterloo, London Bridge, sort of that bit, you know, and just asking everywhere. We must have asked like, you know, hundreds of places, and you know, and out of that, you ask enough times, you'll get a yes, you know. And one of the ones that springs to mind was we found a little car mechanics on the one-way system in Vauxhall, and we were trying to organise a New Year's Eve party with. There was a record shop down in Weybridge called King Size Records, and we don't know how. We didn't actually really get on with these people very well. There was always a bit of a divide. Like I don't think they liked us very much. We liked them, but I don't think they liked us. But we'd offered them this party, said we'd do it with them, and they agreed. So we did this party, and we found these arches, and like we like, you know, cleaned them out. The whole cobbled floor out the front was all just covered in, you know, oil. For as long as there's been motor cars, there's been motor car oil spilt on this. So we went and got a load of hydrochloric acid, poured that all over the place, burnt all the oil off. Managed to get 3 arches together. We had a chill out one, rave one, and then we gave the other one to this record shop. They were playing more sort of housey stuff as well, I think, early breaks. And we did this party, and proper success. And like back then, you know, you could like, it was touchy ground. Like it wasn't illegal, you couldn't be nicked for it. But the one thing the old Bill were like into, and one thing they would shut you down on, was selling alcohol. That was the only thing they really had. This was pre-criminal justice bill. So the selling alcohol was a bit sketchy. But there used to be this like dodgy little workaround where you could like sell a raffle ticket for £1 or whatever, and then take the raffle ticket to the bar.
See, I remember that back in the mid-'80s, that the early Rare Groove parties, they did the same thing. It's like, oh, look, you've won a can of Red Stripe, you know? Well done.
Yeah. And that was the other thing that we didn't really touch on earlier, like, when we were talking about the 91 raves and that, is like, he didn't have a bar. You know, there was no alcohol. It just wasn't a thing. It was a bit later on, like 92, 93, when the alcohols did sort of start to come in to the raves.
Well, like you said, like one of the things that they could shut you down for was the licensing. And yeah, they would have these massive parties, and it's like, well, yeah, they're not selling beer. They just got Lucozade and Ribena and loads of water.
Ribena, wasn't it?
You know, obviously loads of Lucozade keeps you up dancing all night and stuff like that.
Of course it does, mate. Yeah. And Ribena's an anagram of E-brain, but you know.
Yeah.
But no, going back to the thing. So anyway, so like we'd go out and we'd hunt out these venues, you know, and like make them happen. Another one I remember that we found one on Atlantic Road in Brixton. It was a taco shop. It was called Taco Joe's. In there, this fella didn't need much persuading at all. He wasn't selling many tacos at the time, you know what I mean? And he was just like, yeah, you can do that there, easy peasy, bang. And do you know what the funny thing was? Is that the amount of these venues that we went out and found and showed this guy or the owners what you could really do with your space. The amount of them that are clubs now is or have been clubs since we did it was unbelievable. The one in Vauxhall, I don't know exactly what it's called. It's just behind Fire. You know, on the thing, you got the club called Fire there. It might actually be part of that, but it's actually behind it. Maybe I'll get a photo of it for the.
Yeah, well, there's so many clubs, there's so many little clubs around there, and obviously, like Vauxhall's got a long history of like the gay clubs, you know, and
Right.
like even going back to over 100 years ago, had the pleasure gardens there. It was one of them sort of places because it's just by the river and just sort of well, it'd always have a little bit of seediness, shall we say, around that area, or the
Yeah.
late night sort of stuff.
But you know, these places were like carburettors by day, gabba ravers by night. You know, it's like yeah, we turned a lot of these places round.
This is the ironic thing, wasn't it? That you had like maybe the Conservative government trying to stop all these parties, but all the people probably putting these parties on, like you said, like you and Brett. Was it just you and Brett walking about? Was it like a few others of you, or?
When we were doing the looksies for this, yeah, it was me and Brett.
Yeah, but like I said, like you two walking around, you know, you are like entrepreneurs trying to find stuff, make things happen, find spaces. You know, you're probably doing like exactly all the things the government's saying you should be doing, going and like, you know, being proactive and doing
I
stuff.
think entrepreneurs actually make money though. That was the problem. That's the
Well,
difference.
yeah, maybe that's a bit too of a long word. Yeah, blaggers, or what word would you use? Blaggers, or yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, opportunists. I guess no, but making the most of it. No, you are right. It was, you know, you had to think outside. You know, and then like going back around about that time in London. I mean, there was some like by this time now, there was some good squat parties starting to happen. You know, Bedlam and people like that. I remember one up at the Bromley by Bow Library, like right on the A102 there. I remember going up there one night, and you know, that was a vibe. You know, like there was a lot of people there. You know, Bedlam, huge sound, and then I remember like another time on Dalston Road, going to this again. I think it was Bedlam and maybe and Mutoid Waste together. If I got this wrong, I apologise to anyone, but it was a long time ago. I remember going in there and there was like a VW Beetle, like upside down on the roof with kind of like arms sticking out of it, and there was this kind of like metal cage, like 8-foot metal cage with a metal skeleton inside it that was like kind of clockwork, and this skeleton would like rattle its way around the dance floor, you know, and I guess that was the Mutoid Waste end of things. But interestingly enough, what I remember the most about that night, and I walked past that venue the other day, or where it was, and I recognised the gates, and I was like, they're sitting, and I looked across the road and saw the railway line over there, and I was like, yeah, that's definitely the place. Interestingly enough, the rave that we went to there, and that was like the Liberators and people like that, I think, playing there at that time, you know, and they were killing it, you know, in those days, like, you know, like those three under the name of the Liberators, they were killing it, you know, between the three of them, they had that covered. The whole acid techno thing hadn't become a thing yet, but they were playing like Industrial Strength and what was that? Dark Black Ominous Clouds. I can't remember who produced it now. On Industrial Strength, and you're playing stuff like that, but a whole mix-up, seamlessly mixed. Do you know what I mean? Like, seamlessly mixed. But the point I'm getting to was it was in the morning after that. I think that party actually wrapped up a little bit early because it was the Criminal Justice Bill march that day. So I remember we came out of there and down to Hyde Park, I guess it was it?
Yeah, it was Hyde Park, and it was Trafalgar Square as well. But yeah,
I think that's exactly what it is. You got it right. The meeting point was Hyde Park with a procession to Trafalgar Square. I think that's what went on. And you know, you're down there for that. There was like a DIY sound system. I believe they were from either Nottingham or Sheffield.
Yeah, I think they're Nottingham. I think they might be Nottingham.
They had the full float, the lorry, you know what I mean, with like a decent PA set up on the back of there, like pumping out the tunes. And that was a hell of a day, you know, and made absolutely no difference whatsoever to whatever law was about to be passed, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it all kicked off. It did all kick off. I mean, I talked about that in a previous episode. I mean, again, the thing to say is that most venues like didn't go through to 6 legal venues didn't go through to 6 a.m. did they?
No, they didn't.
So that almost was the point. Most clubs still finished at 2, 3 if you're very lucky. I think 3 was really late. Most didn't go to 4, and anything like 4 was unheard of.
Back in the day, we used to get back in time to watch Hitman and Her. You know what I mean? Because that used to be on. We used to get back to someone's house after a rave or whatever. And there was, back in those days, there was only like 4 TV channels, weren't there?
It was always important to get home to watch Hitman and Her, wasn't it? Like
there was. Yeah, it was all about the Hitman.
I don't know if you've seen that Jeremy Deller, the thing he did with all the kids in the class. Did you see that when he was talking about all the rave stuff? And he showed a bit of Hitman and Her. Yeah. And he showed like a one pre-acid house where it's just like in your normal. They just, it's Pete Waterman and was it Michaela Strachan, and they're just in your, generic like nightclub where people are doing stupid dances and everyone's wearing like white shoes and blah blah blah. And then there's one where they go to like an acid. It's basically like they're going, oh, this is acid house, and like suddenly they show the audience, and suddenly they're all super sweating, going absolutely mental, and then it's all like Stack of Humanoid and all that sort of stuff's playing. And like it's a great tune. Yeah, and like Jeremy Deller makes a point of, you can see like Pete Waterman there still looking like he's quite stiff, sort of straight sort of guy, and Michaela Strachan like behind them, the people are just got bandanas on and like are just going fucking mental, and look like they're not just on like the local beverages, they're like peeled out their brains.
Good stuff, isn't it?
So like and it was like this change had happened, this little switch had happened. Because they're in the kind of this, they were always in like the cheesy sort of suburbs or like, your local disco that,
Yeah, I don't know where they filmed them. Discotheques, weren't they? Discotheques, that's the only way you could describe them.
Well, they just go around the country, so it'd be like, we're in Northampton, whatever the cheesy club is. But exactly, So like we're saying like, the clubs, they weren't open all night.
But saying that though, I mean, you mentioned it before about it was available. You could go raving every night of the week back then in London, and you really could. I could almost lift. There was the tricky ones that wouldn't be open, like the Monday nights and the Tuesday nights. But I think it was Limelight on a Monday, Slime Time on a Tuesday. Maybe you could go Knowledge on a Wednesday, Eurobeat 2000 on a Thursday. And then the weekend's the weekend, you know what I mean? It was like that. It was there. You spoke about it in an earlier episode, but it was there. But they didn't go all night. I remember there used to be a good little night back down. What was the club called that was like behind Heaven?
Soundshaft.
Soundshaft. Yeah, well done for that. Yeah, there was a good little night down there about the same sort of time that I'm talking about. I think it was called DMZ. It stood for Demilitarized Zone, and that was. That was something to do with the people from United Systems.
I played at that, Ben. Do you know what? I found a flyer recently, and I'm on that flyer. It's DMZ, Soundshaft. I think it might be Christoph's on that. It might even be some Spiral Tribe. I can't remember if they're in there.
Yeah, maybe. Find it for the see if you can find that for the visuals on your recording. But that was a good thing. But that's like an interesting thing to mention actually, because United Systems. Now, I don't know how we came across these guys. Don't know where. Probably met them at one of these marches or something like that, I would imagine. But I remember like a cold, wet, miserable Wednesday night. Me and Brett jumped in his sky blue Escort Mark II. You know what I mean? This thing, it was a shocker of a motor. And I remember we jumped in there to go up to meet someone about doing a party in this place in Hackney, and it was a snooker hall on Mare Street. And we've gone up there for the meet. Got up there, pitch black, like totally dark, totally freezing. This place ain't got a doorbell, do you know what I mean? It's not the sort of place that's got a doorbell. So like walked up, could see there was like one set of gates that had a sort of fairly fresh looking chain on it. So we've gone up there and sort of like rattled the chain, and like these two like well sketchy little figures have sort of come out of the darkness, maybe with some dogs, probably with some dogs, definitely with the meter long mag light that we were talking about, like, who is it? You know what I mean? And we've gone like Fear Teachers, and all of a sudden like their vibes completely changed, and they're like, oh, Fear Teachers, wicked. Unlock the chain, let us in, We go into this abandoned snooker hall right on Mare Street that I believe was probably something to do with the craze or something like that. It would have been back in the day, but it's well and truly shut down by now. You've got these two characters in there, Joel and Jay, and they were obviously living in the building, like holding it down. They sort of brought us into this like little thing, and they were like living in this sort of like ticket office bit sort of thing, like a little kind of ticket office kind of bit, like really small and cramped. And there was like a dog asleep in a corner and a load of empty cans of nourishment on the floor. And anyway, we said to him, so I think Brett said to him, yeah, look, we spoke to you, what's the opportunity of like doing this party here? And he was like, yeah, we're gonna do the party on Saturday. And he took us down. This is the room you can have. It's a bit flooded at the moment, but we'll sort it out. You know what I mean? We've gone down this, gone down this kind of like spiral concrete staircase, like right into the, into the dungeon of the place. Complete dungeon of the place. And they went like, yeah, do you want to do it? We're like, yeah, we'll do it. Turned up on the Saturday afternoon, brought the sound system in, got it in down the stairs. 2 other sound systems doing that party that I remember. There could have been more, but the 2 others that I remember, and they were, the main room was Chiba City, and upstairs was Jibber. Don't know if people remember Jibber sound system. That was where, you'd have heard Jerome DJing on that like way back in the day. Collection of DJs, great sound systems, like well tuned. Good rooms, good production. They knew what they were doing, those guys. Do you know what I mean? And then there was us like down in the basement doing our thing. And that ran for maybe like 3 or 4 weeks. It was a kind of, a good vibe down there,
Had they got rid of the water by then, had they?
They did. I don't know if you know Joel, and a big shout out to you, Joel, if you're listening. But he's a man of his word. And there was no water in there. How he got rid of it, I don't know. He probably got his dog to drink it. But so that was like a really memorable one for us, and that was our sort of link in to actually doing parties with these guys from United Systems and the people that arranged the buildings for them. And the important fact about that people probably don't know about was the phone line. They had the phone line. 0181 959 7525. That was the number for United Systems. And like every weekend, whether it be a Friday, a Saturday, sometimes midweek, you could give that a call and it would tell you where it was on. Which also brings me back. Do you remember the venue Featherstone Street, just round the back of Old Street? That was like a Friday night thing that went on. It was a squatted venue. It was there for donkeys. Maybe even 2 years, I'm going to say. Maybe that. I'm
not sure, actually. I mean, there was a bit of that time that's when I was out in the States doing some rave parties. So there is some of that time when I was sort of 91, 92. I was sort of out the country doing stuff.
But Featherstone Street, again, I think that was Jibber.
Yeah.
I think it was Jibber that did a lot of that. There used to be these 2 fellas down there. It was something to do with Spiral Tribe, but sort of, or loosely related to it. I think they went under the name of, quite similar, I think they were called Persons Unknown or something like that. Huggy and Jay. And they were like 2303s, 808, 909 live set, do you know what I mean? And they used to rip it,
Yeah, well, that's back then when you would take them out to a dodgy squat rave, yeah?
Yeah,
like, now
exactly.
Now you'd be like over 10 grand's worth of gear. You'd be like too scared to take them out.
That's it.
Yeah, do you know where United Systems were from? Do you know what they're...
It was West London. It was a West London thing. Shout out to Debbie and James. And Simon was a fellow. He lived in Brixton when we went and had some meetings with him down his gaff in Brixton. I haven't seen any of them for donkey's years. Like literally, James, if you're listening to this, give me a shout. I'd love to speak to you and see what you're doing.
Exactly. This is going to be on YouTube as well as obviously Spotify and Apple and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, on the YouTube you can leave comments and all that. So anyone who's Ben's talking about here, please do leave because part of the function of these sort of chats is, like you said, once you start talking about this sort of stuff, you remember some of the stuff. You don't remember all of it, but like you said, there might be someone else chatting who maybe remembers some of the stuff that you can't remember. And we've all got fragmented memories of that time. I will say a disclaimer, for all of the stories in here, it's like they happened a long time ago in the dark of the night under under difficult circumstances or different circumstances. So memories may be, confused or
I think it's fair to say that if you can remember it, you weren't really there.
exactly. Exactly. They say that about the 1960s. Well, I think it's pretty much true for the 1990s. If you can remember the 1990s, then you weren't there. So yeah.
But the other thing around about that sort of era, I'm not very good with like nailing this down as to like where exactly what year this all is. But around about that time was this thing that Brett come up with, and I was like a party to it. It was just like, like I'm loving it all, like it's all good, but we're just not getting exactly the music that like we want to play, you know what I mean? It wasn't there. So like the idea came up of like starting a label, and we were like, right, okay, how do you do that? And we were like, I don't know. I didn't know anyone that owned a record label. No one at all. About a year or so into it, a few other people we did know had, and they gave us a few tips of advice. Most of it wasn't any use. But like one thing that we wanted at the time, me and Brett both wanted two different things out of it. I wanted to produce and put out techno that had breakbeats with it. Do you know what I mean? That was my thing. Brett, if you'd have asked him in the day, like, what did you want out of it? He'd just look you right in the eyes and go, I want music with an edge. That's all he would say. It's got to have an edge. So, like, between us, we were like that. We were like, right, how are we going to do this? Didn't even really know any producers, Neil. Do you know what I mean? We didn't know anyone. We met this fella down a pub. He was from up the road from us. His name was Cal. He had a studio. Came from a family of musicians. So we hit him up. We were like, right, like, what's going on? If we were to like sort of put this on the table, would you be up for it? He was like, yeah, like, what do you want? So we told him what I just told you. And he came up with, alongside Paul Jackson, jumped on some of the production with him, but Cal was most definitely the mastermind behind the EP. And he released Audio Illusion 1, which was called Sex with an Alien. And that record, we borrowed the money to put it out. And that, in those days, you could cut, process and press 500 copies of a record for just with white labels, for just over 400 quid. Like, so they would come in, the unit price was about 80, 85, 90p, somewhere around there. That was how much it cost. So we borrowed the money, and we pressed this first record, and then we went to it. We were like, right, what are we going to do? How are we going to release this? We bought a load of record mailers, and we posted them out to everywhere. John Peel got a list of record distributors, blah 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 blah, and we sent them off. Off they go. And then like a week later, just like couldn't believe the response. You got John Peel. He rings back and he's just like, yeah, great, yeah, I'll be playing that this week. Some guy who ran a distribution company called Plastic Head. They were based up in like sort of the other side of Reading, sort of up that way. And he just rang back and just goes like, yeah, it's brilliant. Like I'll take 100 copies, but I want to speak to you about like a pressing distribution. They're like, well, what do you mean? He was like, well, basically you can just like release whatever you want. I'll pay for it all. And we were just like, really? You know what I mean? Off the back of like one white label 12. We eventually got rid of the 500 copies, sorted out Cal a bit of money, do you know what I mean? And it took a little while for those to move. And then we went up and we started this like pressing and distribution deal with this company called Plastic Head. He was an interesting fellow. His name was Olaf. He was German, and he ran a record label called Seesaw, and he also ran a label called Plink Plonk. They were more sort of like techno stuff. It was out of Frankfurt, I think, but he was based in the UK. And he was just like, do whatever you want. And we're like, what do you mean? He was just like, yeah, you just send us the tracks, we'll pay for them. Do whatever you want, like, you know what I mean? So we were like, wow, man, seriously? Right now, the problem was we didn't have any other artists. You know what I mean? So we were like, right, Cal, knock up another one.
Audio Illusion 1, I bought that back in the day. I've got a copy of that. I think I probably bought it in Unity Records. So right, I've got one. It's white label with a little sticker on or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be it. That's the one.
It's got
Yeah.
the little logo that's like an arch or something.
It's an
AI.
arch. It's got
Oh,
there's AIR on it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was one of them. Obviously, I bought that years before I met. Well, not too many years, but obviously didn't know you lot, and then I think I
A
found
handful
it.
of years it would have been.
Yeah, a handful of
Yeah.
years, and then I sort of found it in my collection. I was like, oh, I do have number one. Yeah.
Yeah. But the problem we had now was like, all right, we got the deal. We ain't got any other artists. You know, we don't know any other producers. We're like, Cal, knock up another one. You know what I mean? So he's in. He's like, yeah, this is going quite well. So he makes another one. That was number 2. We found some guy who made us some tune we didn't really like very much, but we put it out anyway. Don't talk about that. And then Phil Klein that we mentioned earlier, who I met via UK Fresh. He's doing his electro thing, you know, like his Dynamics 2 Miami bass sort of thing. That's what he was always really into. I had a chat with him and said, like, you know, do you want to do something like this? It's like, you know, it's got to have a bit of a sort of a broken beat or a break beat, and it's got to have an edge. And he was just like, yeah. He goes, I've been thinking about this anyway. And he knocked us up an EP under the name of Final Dream. He did that. And then it all started to roll, and there it was off. Then one day, I get a phone call from the distribution company, and it's this fellow Olaf, and he says to us, he says, you need to come into the warehouse. And I said, well, why? Well, everything okay? We were thinking he was going to tell us that like we didn't have a deal anymore, our music was shit, and like if we could like, and we owe him $1,000 or something. That was kind of what I was expecting, but he didn't. He said to us, look, things aren't going well down here. You're probably never going to get paid for any of this. Like you're never going to get a check out of us. Goes, bring the biggest car you can, and take all your stock. So we were like, yeah. So me, Brett, and I think Greg, we jumped in the motor. I think we took his word for it. So we got ourselves a Volvo Estate. You know what I mean? Didn't get much bigger in those days. And we went in and we took all the stock we could. I think we actually went back for a second run, actually, like about a week later. And we got all the stock and we got it out there and we piled it up, man, with records, thousands of the things. And looking at them thinking, like, what on earth are we going to do? Like, you know, got all these tunes, like, you know. But it didn't really matter because as worried as we were, then the phone rang. Well, actually, the phone had rung like a little bit earlier, and there was this fella called Ben, who was from Spiral Tribe. He lived in Willesden, in a squat in Willesden. And he said to me, oh, yeah, we're out in Berlin or something like that. And he goes, we come across your record and, you know, people like it. We'd like to get our hands on some to sell at our parties. So I was like, oh, yeah, great, you know what I mean? Anyway, so I'll give him a call back anyway. And said, like, you know, like, are you guys still doing this? He was like, yeah, like, absolutely we are. So I was like, well, good, because we got loads more of them now. And that is where that is where the beginning of the kind of what later went on to be called the subnet, the swapping of records, the swapping and the selling of records. That was the beginning of it for us, and it led to great and beautiful things. But that was the beginning for us. And I remember I was living in Tower Bridge at the time, just on the south side of the river, near Jamaica Road, and I remember a fellow, Mark from Spiral Tribe, he came over. He said, yeah, we're going out to Europe to do some technivals and stuff like that, and we're stocking up the record shop, and I'd like to come through and see what you got. So he pitches up, turns up. Remember Lucy made some milkshakes. We had some milkshakes, and we sat there and we talked about business and stuff like that. And he said, yeah. And then at the end I said, Mark, how many of these records do you want to take? And he said, all of them. And I went, what, all of them? And he went, yeah, I think as long as they fit in the car, like, or the van, I'll take them all. So I was like, yeah. So, and lo and behold, he did. And then I can remember Lucy turning around to me and saying, like, Ben, I said, oh, great news, Luce. I said, like, he took all the records. She said, did he pay for them? I went, no, he's going to be back in a few weeks. Like, he'll be back in a few weeks. He told me it was sweet. Yeah, so he's gone anyway.
Remember when we discussed the use of the word entrepreneur? Yeah.
I
Exactly. Funny thing is, I had that exact conversation with him at that time because he took loads of my records at the time.
Right. Yeah.
I'm in that. There's a little booklet subnet or something which has all the labels.
Right. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I know you're in it as Audio Illusion, but I'm in it there as Unearthly.
Unearthly, of course. Yeah, yeah. It would have been.
Yeah, and I remember him coming round to my flat, Mark, in
Yeah,
Old Kent Road
yeah,
when I was in the Old Kent Road, I think,
yeah, yeah.
and having that very similar conversation. I can't remember if he disappeared with all my records without paying me.
But anyway, as luck would have it, he did turn up at the end of the summer. Like, you know, I think he picked him up in like June or something like that. And as luck would have it, like he's obviously a man of his word. He pitched up in September or October or something. Apologies, Mark, if it was a lot quicker than that, but as I remember it, and there he was, man, and he paid us up. You know what I mean? And I was just like, yeah, and like as a label, you know, we couldn't believe it. We were like, that's just fantastic. And that was like really happy days, you know. So, and then, you know, that by this time the labels, obviously from him doing that, the labels like got its own notorious, like, well, people know who it is, like across Europe. Do you know what I mean? And that was where, yeah, the Subnet. Interestingly enough, the name the Subnet was actually one of Brett's little things that he came up with. He always wanted use for that name, Subnet. And I remember one time standing around in a party on a Sunday with Mark, and he was talking about this kind of like swapping, selling records thing. This was after this had happened. And he said, oh yeah, we need to get it going, but I'm looking for a name. And I said to him, Subnet. And he just looked at me and went, that's the one. And that was another one of Brett's little things.